Hello and welcome back to the channel, and thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. You, somebody who has been threatened with a smart meter. Have you had those annoying emails or even letters, or people at the door trying to break in to put one on the wall? Maybe you're one of those people who've got one stuck on the wall, radiating at you, driving you mad, turning your hair ginger. Or if you're already ginger, maybe it's turning your hair blonde, maybe growing your eyelashes a little bit. And anyway, whatever. If you are one of those people who really does not want to have this happen to you in this day and age in which we want to have a little bit of freedom from these tyrants telling us what we want, then the man you need to listen to is Stan McDonald. And by a strange quirk of fate, he joins me now. Hello, Stan.
Hello, Richard. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you back. We haven't had you on the show for a while. Now, we were saying just beforehand, I thought we'd cleared up the whole thing about smart meters with you some time ago, but this is somewhat different.
Yes, what we did before was we discussed what the problem was with the smart meters, and producing dirty electricity and other things. But a lot of people are like, okay, you told us the problem, now give us the solution. So this presentation is, what is the solution?
What is the solution? Yeah, absolutely. Now, if people do notice that your bandwidth goes down, we can still hear you. It's just it may, as it just did then on the screen. But please don't let that ruin your enjoyment of the show. Stan will be doing a hillbilly dance routine at the end, so stay tuned for that. I may have made that up. Anyway, so the smart meter, let's get on with it. You've got a presentation and I've got the slides, and if I'm very clever, I can press the appropriate buttons at the right time and you can take us through it. Over to you, Stan.
Yeah, we're discussing basically today the danger of smart meters and 5G. And this 5G also relates to the ULEZ cameras because they're transmitting wirelessly at the same time.
Right.
And a lot of people are being, bombarded with this, and there's 18, new towers going up, and they're putting in 5G. And a lot of people have come to me and said, well, what do we do about it? And so what we're going to basically, in roughly an hour's time, I'm going to tell you what we can do basically about it. But I'm also offering at the end, you'll see it, to do presentations where we actually deal with the actual paperwork.
Fantastic. That's really good.
I tried to put that through before, and the problem with organizing a seminar when I'm not in the country is I have four people tell me I'm interested, I'm here, 2 people over here, 6 people there, 1 person here. It's not practical to rent space to do a presentation for 1 or 2 or 6 people.
No, of course.
So I need you guys collectively to get together and say, okay, we're going to do it here, and basically I'll come do the event. You take care of the venue, the screen, the projector, and I'll take care of the rest. And you can usually do that if you go to a conference center. They have all the hardware you need.
Of course, and there's a lot of these hubs, these freedom hubs, and these groups that get together. I mean, I was on one at Buxton the other day, and they have all the equipment. They're quite used to people coming. But I suppose what you really want is to have them quite close together, because you've got to come over from Canada, and so there's no point having one in January and one in December, because they're like 12 months apart.
Right. No, what I'm trying to do is coordinate it so we can do it within the next month or so.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But in the meantime, I want to give you a couple of solutions that you can do in advance of that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's crack on with the dangers of smart meters and 5G.
Right. Next slide.
Next slide.
Okay, some people have asked me, well, how do I know if I have an analog meter? And these meters that are on this screen are primarily the ones used in North America, which would be Canada and the United States. There may be other places using similar meters. The meter that's on the left-hand side, you can see the aluminum wheel. Yep. That is the old analog meter. That meter doesn't transmit any type of RF. Now, the meter that's on the right is what they're replacing it with, and it does transmit, and it's constantly talking to the power company. And so that's how you can differentiate. If yours has a digital display, then it's what we would call a smart meter. Now, in the UK, they are attempting to shut off what's called an RTS meter, which basically it's got a signal and it reports in, and they're going to shut that signal off, so your meter may not work right. And I've provided Richard a letter that you can send to the power company advising them if there's any sort of interruption. But
Right, yeah,
anyway,
that's it. I mean, I'm being contacted all the time by my electric provider or broker,
mhm.
the same business, saying, come September or July, whenever it is, the BBC's RF signal that will switch it between night and day will go off. But anyway, so yes, I have the meter that's pretty much on the left-hand side with a wheel whizzing round, which was very useful because you could tell if you were burning too much electricity because it would spin so fast.
Exactly. Next slide. Okay, one of the problems in North America when they changed the meter, if you look at this, I've given you a meter base and then I blew up the picture. You'll
Hmm.
see on the side of the lower contact on the right, you'll see something stuck on the side of it. And what that is when somebody was plugging the meter in, they actually didn't have it lined up with the prongs and it arced out. Because when they pull that meter, current is flowing in your home and they pull the meter, which compromises the box, and then they plug the new meter in and they compromise it a second time. Now, what
Right.
happens is everything that's drawing current in your home is running, and all of a sudden, bang, it's gone. And then they reconnect it a couple of minutes later when they plug the new meter in, and all of that inrush current. Now, if you remember, about a year and a half ago, uh, several places in the United Kingdom had their power shut off overnight. And we discussed this on a previous presentation. And when that power came back on, everything that was connected to the UK grid was all trying to get going and starting at the same time, which caused the power surge, right?
Oh, yes, of course.
And it burned out all kinds of stuff. Modems were burned out, people's televisions didn't work. And so we don't want these smart meters. And that's partially the purpose of that letter that I provided.
Right. Okay.
Now, if we go to the next slide, we're going to get to the UK meters. Oh, sorry, we're going to still stay on it. Okay, those four prongs plug into those four sockets. That's what it is. And what happens is those prongs on the older meters, they were wider, so they made a nice, good, solid connection. Now, if we go to the next slide, I've circled them for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Those. Now,
Ah, right.
when
Okay.
when the new meters are made, because they're making everything cheaper, they make them thinner, so they don't fit in the nice socket as good and solid as the old ones did, and potentially they could arc, which causes heat. Heat makes resistance. And once we have that, now we have a potential fire hazard.
Yes.
So that's why we don't want the new smart meters.
Okay.
Now, if
So,
we go to
yeah, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
on. No, no, go on.
Okay, so when we go to the next meters, now we're going to deal with the ones that are in the UK. Now we can see here that on the right-hand side we have the old analog meter. It's basically the same as the one in North America with the little wheel, and it has a little counter on it. And then on the other side we see these smart meters. Again, we see the digital display, but we notice this one here is actually pay as you go. That's why it says PayWise. You can see it on the one lower corner. And
Oh,
what that's
paying
doing,
with a credit card or a debit card
right
because it's
now, if
tap
we
and
look,
go.
tap and go. And what they're doing is they're forcing people that want to challenge the smart meter. If you do something and you're trying to use the bill of exchange or some other method, they don't like what you're doing, and they will force with the police a meter replacement to this digital smart meter. Now, it's made by Landis and Gear, which is the same ones that make the ones in Canada. If we look at the bottom where it says PayWise, we see where it says CE, and then we see the stick with a little dot. That's telling you that's the electronic symbol for a switch. So they can shut that meter off whenever they want.
Right.
If you tick them off, they'll shut your meter off. I've dealt with that with Ontario Hydro because I fought the power company when they wanted to put a smart meter in, and it took some doing, but anyway, I fought them on it, and they don't want to cooperate. So the only way we're going to get a remedy is to go through a court. Just that's the way it's going to be, right?
Yeah.
But we can do something in the meantime. If you don't want to go to court, then I can give you some remedies, and that's what this presentation is about.
Right.
Next slide. Okay, so what I did, if you remember, I told you that the old meters, they didn't produce any harmonics in the last presentation. And then
Yeah.
I also told you the new ones do produce a harmonic. So what I did was I built a power saver device, which you can see in the screen. Okay? It's
Yeah.
that little white box with the cable coming out of it. And what I do is I provide a cable with it that gets hooked up to your electrical panel. And basically they'll have a plug on it. And if you have two properties, you can unplug the power saver, take it to your next property, or you can take it with you when you move. Now, I promoted this thing back in 2019. I was making these units, and people were saying, "Hey, I got a less electricity bill." I said, "Well, that's nice. That was the purpose of it, but it also, at the same time, filters out that dirty harmonic." So, and
Right.
then I gave a testimonial from one of the people that hooked it up.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can see it plugged in there, and it's got a yellow cable versus a black cable, but same thing.
Yeah.
Now, if we go to the next slide, I'm going to give you something important. Okay, so what I did, I wanted to make my unit better than everybody else. So what I did was I got a Stetzer meter, because a lot of people know what a Stetzer meter is. You plug it in, and basically it tells you what your dirty electricity number is. Without the filter, without my filter or any filter, it reads 470. Then I plugged it in with a Stetzer filter, which is the white box with the cable going over it. It
Yeah.
reads 147. And then with my filter, it reads 30. Any number over 50 is classified as deadly.
Blimey. So a lot of people might have deadly, dirty electricity in their houses.
They do. There's no
Yeah.
question they do.
Right. Okay.
So I'm trying to build a filter. I tried to build a filter that will turn around and get rid of as much of it as we possibly can.
Yes. And it's under 50, as you can see there at 30. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well done,
I'm
you.
actually working on a better one to see if I can get that number even less. The ideal number would be 0.
Yes.
But the problem is when they build electronic devices, your computer, your television, whatever, instead of using a transformer like we used to use in the old days, they use what's called a switch mode power supply. And so what I want to do is I want to filter out the switch mode power supply that's coming from the smart meter, plus everything else that's plugged into your electrical circuits. Now, one of the issues is even if you had an analog meter, okay, which would be better, you're connected to a transformer outside, which gives you the power to your house or business, and your neighbor might have a smart meter, so his garbage is still on your line,
Oh, right.
right? It's not to the same extent because typically there's 3 homes on one circuit, one transformer. It's a 30 kVA transformer. You get 10, neighbor gets 10, and the other neighbor gets 10. So they're sharing their garbage with you, and the transformer doesn't stop it. But
Right. Yeah.
we're doing the best we can, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Next slide. Okay, the other solution which will help is if you count the number of electrical circuits in your building, and you go to your electrical panel to do this, and you'll have to measure the diameter of the wire as close as you can. Now, what you can do is you can use this thing, and this thing is called a ferrite core. You can get these on Amazon, you can get them on eBay. And you open them up like a hot dog, you stick the wire in there. It doesn't matter if the power is turned on or not, doesn't matter, because you're dealing with the rubber part, and you close the hot dog around the wire. And what that does is the circuits, as we're going to get into shortly, they're radiating energy. And this thing is trying to capture that energy so it doesn't spew out into the room.
That's
So
very clever.
yeah, and they're made for that. I mean, I'm not bringing up something that we don't know about. Technology's
Yeah.
known about ferrite cores forever.
Right.
Monitors often have a ferrite core built into the line that goes to your computer or the power line. Same thing with computer speakers, because we don't want them picking up stray voltages. Then you hear humming and funny noises on the power line, and it's transmitting into your computer, and you're going, "What's that weird noise?"
Yeah.
Right. Next slide. Okay, people have said, okay, now what's the issue with the smart meter? Well, the smart meter is radiating RF, which is the same thing as your microwave oven. This was provided to me by somebody that has this problem. And that burn is an RF burn caused from the smart meter, which in this case happens to be in their kitchen.
Cool. Blimey.
It
Look
was
at
put
that.
in their kitchen 25 years ago, long before smart meters, and here we are. And you can see the radiation burn. And now that thing, if it goes, that'll cause all kinds of weird health concerns, especially cancer and other things.
I'm not surprised.
So this is why we need to get on this sooner rather than later. Right? Next slide.
Yep.
And there's another, it's the same person, but look at their hand. It's all burnt from this RF. And you
Yeah.
don't have any control over it. Now, 5G is the 5th generation of wireless technology. And I'm going to show you something that if you guys watch this, you're going to see. On the next slide, I think it'll be on one of the next slides. Okay, now if we look at this chart, and it says AWG, which stands for American Wire Gauge. You guys in the UK use something different. It doesn't matter. The point's the same. The second line up, you see number 14, which is 14 in our case 3. 14.3 because there's 3 conductors. Now, if we
Right.
go over to the opposite side, we see here where it says 6,700 hertz in the second last column.
Oh yeah.
So that means that wire is good to handle 6,700 hertz. Well, here's the problem, people. The switch mode power supply in your smart meter, whether you're in the UK or Canada, doesn't make any difference, is operating at least 10,000 hertz to 20,000 hertz. So that's like me telling Richard, hey, Richard, go get a funnel and a small bottle, and we're going to fill the bottle with some water. So Richard does that, and he squats down on the ground. He's holding the funnel, and I come over with a 7-foot bucket with a front end loader full of water. How much water is going to go in that funnel? Enough to fill the bottle? Yeah. What's going to happen to the rest of it? It's going to spew out all over the environment, right?
Yes.
It'll be all over the ground. That's what those RF, those ferrite coils or chokes are going to eliminate. That's what that power filter is going to reduce.
Right.
We want to get that to the least number possible because it should never be beyond 6,700 hertz. And as we get to smaller wire at the top of the scale, top of the chart here, we're getting to different size wires, right? And the smaller the wire, like you guys in the UK probably don't use 14, you're probably using 15 wire because you guys operate on a 13 amp circuit.
Yes.
As opposed to us, it's 15. You may be using 14 wire, I don't know. But the point is, we have to get rid of this problem. Next slide. Now, the problem with the UK, or at least the European people, is you guys have 2 different styles of plugs. And if you want a power saver, I am producing. I need to know if you use the round plug that's showing on the left, or whether you use the straight prong plugs that are showing on the right.
Well, we would have a 3-pin plug over here. Yeah, on the right.
You should be the ones on the right, but I'm dealing with people all over the place.
Of course.
Yep. Actually, the people in the UK have the safest plugs in the world.
Well, ours are earthed, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, so are ours, but I mean, our plugs, you can plug 2 keys in it. Those plugs that you have, they have a special cover on them to prevent people from getting electrocuted.
Yeah, didn't stop me growing up with my dad, who used to show me if you put a matchstick in the top one, it would release the second 2 and you could poke bare wires into them, and then a plug on top of that. And we used to do that a lot. And occasionally we had a few little mishaps where we would wake up on the other side of the room. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I have helped a guy in Tennessee, and he wrote a little letter here. He said, I've had a lengthy lawsuit with the utility over installing a transmitter. They put a transmitter on his property illegally. Okay? Many people died and others are sick. The utility filed a motion to dismiss our case, and we heard on Friday. We had enough evidence to go to court. That's because I told them what to do to get the evidence. The equipment used was a 30-day heart monitor from his doctor. So we got the doctor to give him a heart monitor. Okay? Called a Holter monitor, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, then we used an HF59B meter and an NFA 1000 RF monitor. Now, the HF59B meter will give us the direction from where the RF is coming from, and the NFA 1000 meter is actually a data logging thing that plugs into a computer, and you'll get a chart out of it. Okay, when the health symptoms occurred, exactly the same time as the NFA 1000 monitor showed them. It's the same time that it was recorded on his Holter monitor. So that therefore the meters don't lie, and they can't dispute it because we can't alter the Holter monitor. It runs and it keeps track of the date and time.
Right.
So this is how we're going to solve our problem. Next slide.
Okay.
Now, what that NFA 1000 meter did was it gave us 2 different graphs, and I've separated them on separate screens. But if we go to the next slide, we'll see what's happening. All these spikes, they tell us that a smart meter only talks once in a while. Once a day or 3 times a day, 4 times a day.
Right.
That is a load of malarkey. Because if you look at this chart, it shows you all those power spikes, and those power spikes are well over what they classify as the safe limit. They're way over the safe limit.
Yeah.
And so because they're way over the safe limit and we use our recording equipment and we're going to record it at your specific place, then we can say, well, if you claim it's safe, from wherever you tested it, and I'm going to show you in my own environment, my own house, and like that lady that has it in her kitchen cupboard, that's ridiculous, and show them and say, look, this is what it's reading right from here, and this is the directional source, and we're not using some fly-by-night flimsy outfit. The meter doesn't lie. And so we can see here, now those millivolts that shows on the bottom, MV is millivolts, those millivolts don't belong on the system. Okay, they're because you're supposed to have a true sine wave, which we showed in the last presentation, looks like the letter S. Well, we don't have a true sine wave. We have a sine wave with a whole bunch of junk attached to it. And your equipment, your computers, your televisions, your electronic devices don't like that harmonic. And here's the key, guys. It's outside the IEEE 519 standard. So you can actually go after the power company and say your electricity doesn't conform to the IEEE 519. And IEEE is the International Electrical. That's what the IE part stands for, right? So they have to conform to putting out 50 hertz for you guys or 60 hertz for us.
Right.
Right. Next slide. Now here this is showing the RF. That last screen was showing the millivolts, the spikes. This one is actually showing the RF that's being transmitted. And this was taken from a person's house. I think they were on the second floor. And if you look at the bottom of this screen, people, you're going to notice the time, the date and the time and all that. And
so that's just like one day. It seems to be permanently on.
Right. So when they tell you, well, the meter only transmits once in a while, I'm sorry, but that is a load of malarkey. Here's the screenshot to prove it. Right?
Yeah.
And the guy just even noted in there, severe pain in his heart. Right? Sent messages to the heart monitor. So the guy's documented it and he won his case.
Yeah.
Now, next slide. What we need to do, and I don't have the meters, so what we need to do, rather than have somebody spend, the European or the Canadian equivalent, what we need to do is buy that meter and another meter, because this one is the 59D meter, and that'll give us the direction of where the signal is coming from, and it'll record it. We can take pictures of it, of the screen, and we can put a calculator or a clock or something there to show the date. So we can document the date, we can document the time, we can document the reading. Now, if we had that meter in the UK, which we can get a hold of one if we have to, we can find out where the source of the problem is, and we can literally shut down every smart meter there is, and any transmitter tower, including those black poles that some people don't seem to like in their town. Because we can prove that the thing's transmitting. That's what this will do. That's why that green little antenna is on there.
Right.
Now, if we go to the next slide. This thing is the NFA 1000. This is the data logger that made those charts shown on the previous screen. And you'll notice there's 3 lights on the side of that display. There's 2 green ones and a red one. When we get into a danger zone, you're going to see it go from green to the middle one to red one, and the red one's danger. Now, some people are going to go, holy crap, you're looking at $4,000 or $4,500 to get these meters to fight this. Yes, this is why I need people within the UK or within Canada or the States or wherever they are to stick together. And if they want, I will help you write the documents to deal with this crap, because I'll have to purchase these meters. So I'm not going to do it for free. I've done a lot of legal work for free, but I'm not going to do this because I only need that meter for my own use for about 10 minutes.
Yes.
But if we're going to use it to fight it in court and say, here's the meter, here's the documentation, and the company that makes the meter is certified, let's go. Now, next slide. Some people want a cheaper alternative. Okay, this is not as good of a meter. It won't stand up as nicely in court, but this one is basically a simple meter. And you see it's got the green dots, the yellow dots, and the red dots. And if you go anywhere in your building, this isn't going to give you a direction. That's why we want the other meter. But if you want to find out a cheaper way to do it, you can look there, and if it's getting into yellow and it's into the red, you know it's in the danger zone.
Yes.
Right? It's simple. And you can, again, put up something beside it that'll show them the date and the time, and take a picture, and you can use it in the court. Okay, next slide. The other alternative is this meter, but it doesn't really tell you whether it's dangerous or not. But this one will read RF, which is the stuff coming off the meter, and it'll also read electrical, so if it's radiating out of the wire, right?
Yeah.
So this is another alternative. But again, it's not as good as those first 2 meters.
No, quite. I mean, the direction finding thing is obviously you can pinpoint where it's coming from.
And that's what we want to do, because then we can blame it on their meter and say, we know it's your meter.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Right. Next slide. Now, we got something here that's really helpful. This says this device complies with Part 15 of the FCC Rules of Operation and is subject to the following conditions. This device may not cause harmful interference. 2, this device must accept any interference received, including interference that may cause undesired operation. Well, they just gave us a clue. The FCC is the Federal Communications Commission, and they regulate all RF meters. And because those meters are made by Landis and Gear, at least the ones I showed you, they have to comply with this FCC. But it says this device complies with Part 15 of the FCC rules. Operation is subject to the following 2 conditions. The device may not cause harmful interference. Any device that's going to radiate is going to cause harmful interference. So you now got the golden ticket to turn around and nail them in the court.
Okay.
Right? Because it has to comply with that FCC rule. And I don't care if you're in Canada or the States or the UK. They all have to comply with that. Next slide. Now, some people are going to say, okay, well, what do I do in the meantime? And so what this is there's a child's bed on the one side, and then there's a crib on the other side. And what happens here is you can build what's known as a Faraday cage. And a Faraday cage, what it does is it keeps the RF signal in, or it keeps the RF signal out. The idea being that the signal is going to hit that screen if it's made out of the right material. And if you ground it to the wall plug, or a grounding rod, one person even turned around and put the cable outside the window and hooked it to the cable at night with an alligator clip. The signal will hit that, and it'll try and go that path as opposed to going through you. Is it a perfect solution? No, but it does help. The better solution would be if we made that out of a piece of aluminum.
Right, yeah, okay.
Because then it's solid, right? And you can get different materials that will block the signal better. Now, if you're going to build one of these things on the cheap, right, the least expensive, you'll have to go to some place like Home Depot or Screwfix or Lowe's or some construction outfit that sells plywood and boards and things. And you'll have to get a window screen, this is the hard part, that's made out of aluminum that's not painted. You need the silver screening. Or if you want to take the next step up, there is actually specially woven material that has silver threads in it, which works as a better RF shield. Right?
Right. Yes.
Now,
so if you were in a camper van, does that act as a Faraday cage? Steel.
Steel will, yeah. Steel's a good stopper, but the problem is you have windows. Glass doesn't stop RF.
Oh, right.
So you'd have to put the screen over the windows, and they have to be connected in a complete loop, because if there's a break in the circuit, it'll just get through the cracks, right?
Right. Okay.
And the other problem is, both of these got a problem. There should be a screen on the bottom too, because stuff can radiate through wiring that's going underneath your floor.
Yes.
So there's another issue.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
And there's another one done for the dining room table. Basically, you open it like a tent. You close it when you're in there, and it reduces it. It's not going to eliminate it 100%.
No. It reminds me of the COVID days when people were doing all sorts of strange things to avoid poisons.
Mm-hmm. And yet some of them took the medical intervention.
Apparently they did.
This is another option. This is an expensive option. And what you do here is you basically take this black pail and you paint the wall. And what it is a conductive paint. And then what you do on your where your electrical outlets are, you take a piece of silver tape, because the wall is now conductive, and you tape the wall and you push it inside the metal blocks, which should be grounded in your electrical system. So when the RF signal comes through, it hits that thing and it runs to ground because it's the path of least or of least resistance. Does it
Right.
stop it all? No, but it'll stop some. But
Right.
look at a 5 gallon pail of this stuff is $1,260.40. And the problem is it's black. So if you wanted to, you'd have to probably repaint it. Now, if you were doing a building and you were very careful and you were putting up drywall, you could put this paint on the inside of the drywall and connect it with a piece of tape when you put the next piece up, and so on and so forth. And then you could ground it inside the wall. And then when you put the drywall up, nobody'd know the difference.
Yes.
But most people aren't going to rip their walls down to
No,
find
of
out.
course, no, no. I mean, it's hugely expensive.
Yeah. All we're trying to do is reduce it as much as we can. Now, a good question for the viewer is, why is there a patent for this subliminal acoustic manipulation of the nervous system? And it gives you the patent number. If I was the patent office and you tried to patent that, I would be phoning whoever I had to and say, this guy's building a weapon, because that's a weapon. And the military, the U.S. military at least, has a motto to protect from, or an oath, sorry, to protect from enemies both foreign and domestic. Well, anybody that has this patent or wants to make use of it is actually an enemy of the state, because they're actually screwing around with the population, and it also is a violation of the U.S. Code Title 50. So, you know, why is this being permitted?
Yeah.
Obviously, the government doesn't care. Now, people said, well, if the government doesn't care, how do we do something about it? Well, actually, there's a legal law or a legal statute, if you want to call it that. It's called Proceeding Against the Crown, so we can hold the government accountable. Next slide. Now, if just in case they claim that it doesn't give any problems, this cell tower, look what it says, this 5G small cell tower signal emitted by the tower is damaging to human, animals, and other stuff. And it lists on the bottom, exposure can cause headache, insomnia, cognitive fog, which means you're not thinking straight, fatigue, tendonitis, vision problems, heart issues, flu-like symptoms, muscles and nervous system. Some people even throw up. So if this 5G tower, which there's all kinds of them popping up, you got a right to a safe place to live. And there's
And
their own admission right off their own tower.
is
So how are you
is
going to
is
deny?
that their own thing? Because I did do a video, I have to say, some time ago now, saying why don't we make up stickers like that that says warning 5G tower causes human death, and then we stick them on all the blooming 5G towers so that the people who have not yet woke up to it, it looks like it's an official sticker and it's on there, and they'll start to see them and going, hang on a minute, why is this here?
That is an official sticker right off a cell tower. Yes, that's a
Right.
real one. It's not one
Uh,
somebody stuck on later.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Next slide. Okay, so now this is a war that was going on. In this case, the city council approved the installation of these 5G towers, and people challenged it, but they wrote in and they didn't actually push it through and far enough. And so these things are now on buildings. Okay, but they made a public announcement. So anybody that's ever done this, if you're in a similar situation and you objected to it, you need to keep that information. Okay, we're going to use it, later.
Yeah.
Next slide. Now, this is the view from somebody's front yard. Look how many towers and repeaters and transmitters are on that one building. That building, by the way, is a natural gas power plant.
Right.
Produces electricity in one of the British Isles. I'm not going to give you any more information than that. But the top ones are 5G transmitters. Look how many's up there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we see these other smaller round ones. Those are directional collectors, as far as I know. And then there's another 5G one on the bottom. So if they say, well, the 5G only emits once in a while, well, here we got 5 different transmitters all transmitting at whatever time they want. And
Yes.
I've done a dirty electricity comparison, and I find out, for some strange reason, that those dirty electricity numbers that were 470 on that one slide I showed you were over 1,250, and it's usually between 10 o'clock at night and about 3:30 in the morning. Now, you tell me why there's more dirty electricity on a wire at nighttime when most of the businesses are shut down.
Yes.
I think they're doing this on purpose.
I
But
think you're
anyway,
right. Yeah.
next slide. Now, here's where things get really squirrely. Now, if you see it says band exposure quadrant and it says 1.45E-04. Now, if you use a calculator and you get the numbers beyond 16 decimals or whatever your calculator is good for, it's going to put a letter there to designate the fact that, you're beyond what the calculator can do. Well, that's exactly what this is. 1.45E, and I'd have to find out what E stood for, but the ICNIRP limit, which is in the next column over, is 458. Well, that other one over there is about 10 times higher. And then if you look at this as a test result, look at the frequency, the bandwidth in megahertz, 800, 900, 1800, 2100, 2600. They're not even checking for 5G, for crying out loud. This is the old stuff. 1G was 900 megahertz, 2G was 1800, 3G is 2100, 4G is 2600. Well, we're at 5G and beyond, so their test is a piece of junk. It doesn't even tell you, right? And it's over the safe limit. We already know that. That's from their own bloody paperwork.
Good heavens.
And it even tells you the site name, what they're doing, and they're telling you how many people and who's actually running these stations. SureG is one, JT is another, Airtel is another. They got two of them, and then JT's on there again. And they got a permit to install maybe one transmitter. Once they got that permit, they use it and they put up 5 transmitters. Well, why don't they just put up 10 transmitters? Each one needs its own permit, and here's the thing. The FCC went to court 3 times, okay? And they said, we want to install these 5G stuff. And the court said, you have to do a safety assessment study to make sure this is safe before you go doing that. And they didn't like the answer, so they appealed it. The second time the court came back, you still have to do that safety assessment study. They appealed it a third time, you still have to do the safety assessment study. I got news for you. The safety assessment study's never been done. It's never been done. I've checked with the power companies and the transmitter towers all over the United States and Canada. It's never been done. And I even checked in with the UK about 3 years ago, and they said there was no such safety studies done. There's the grounds to build your case, guys. And look at this. The results show the total EQ that was measured on, look at the funny looking date, 1/13/29. So we're either in 2029, and I missed about 4 years, or their paperwork is so screwed up they don't even realize. That's their own test results from their own darn paperwork.
It's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
And so, hang on, go back to the screen. All we got to do is check our max E field and make sure it exceeds this limit in your property. And all we got to do is make sure the max RF field exceeds what they say is the safe limit. And the safe limit, by the way, they keep adjusting it. Now, the RF that comes out of the meter, guess what? It's classified as a class 2B carcinogenic, which is the same as lead, mercury. We have the documents to prove all this. Next slide. This paper is from Canada, and it says information about the hazards of smart meters. It was even in the freaking newspaper. This is, several years ago.
Yeah.
I collect all this crap because it's useful. So there you go. They're admitting it. So if it's dangerous in one place, and it's the same RF in wherever you live, the UK or US or whatever, Australia, it's going to have the same dangers because it's the same technology.
Yes.
Next slide. Now, what I propose to do is give people, if there's an interest, I tried this before, on smart meters, and we will go through what's wrong with the smart meter, which is basically this presentation, connected with the other presentations, because I try and keep things within an hour. And then we're going to go through the paperwork that can be used to deal with it. But I need you guys to collectively organize this, because when I tried it, I had 2 people from here, 3 people from there, 6 from here. I don't know how many I can bring from somewhere else, and I can't be running all over the countryside registering these seminars when I don't know how many people are going to show up. So it's collectively up to you guys to figure this out, and I'd like an answer by the 15th. If you can organize it, I'm not saying we have to do it on the 15th, but I'd like an organization to know when we can do it so I can make a public announcement. Next slide. I'm going to do the same thing with council tax. I got, 1 person here, 3 people here. One guy says he's interested, but he doesn't know how many will come. I need you to organize it, and I'm just going to get paid to do the event. Now, what I'm expecting is you can go to these places that are used to running seminars, and they'll have all the equipment for you waiting to go. I'll show up, do my work. I'll give you the paperwork. I'll tell you how we can challenge it, and then it's up to you guys if you want to take to the next step. If you don't do anything, then things are just going to go as the status quo. Next slide. Now, I've been asked by a number of people in Canada, in Ontario specifically, if we can challenge property standards bylaws. And they're trying to pass laws to regulate the licensing and parking of motor vehicles on private property, and the municipalities don't have that authority. It's under Section 50 and Section 63 of the Municipal Act, and we have a court judgment that proves it. So if you're interested in challenging your property standards bylaw enforcement or the building code within your municipality, let me know by the 15th, because I want to organize this so we can start running these things, probably within the next month. Next slide. Okay, if you're interested in attending any of these events, please let me know by email. My email is on the screen, and then we can organize something. Because if it drags on and on, it'll never get resolved, and I'd like it resolved, especially when I see people with RF burns from smart meters.
So, is there any way you could do, I know I've mentioned this to you before, but any chance you can do a web seminar?
I am not set up to do that, and if I was doing that, I can't answer specific questions. If you want a specific web seminar, it would basically be the same as these recorded videos. There might be some slight differences, but basically it's the same information.
Yes, but you could do one on Zoom on a specific date. Could you not? I mean, just thinking of those people.
I could. Actually, we did this before where we had to Ask Stan thing.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind coordinating something like that, we can certainly do that.
Yes, we could coordinate a day, set it up, and then those that want to come in and ask you specific questions, we just set, say, a couple of hours, and then we can go through the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not set up to do that, but if you wouldn't mind facilitating that, I didn't want to put a burden in your lap.
I can get rid of that burden.
But the thing is, when we do it globally like that, there's going to be a lot more people. And that's good. I don't have a problem. The more people that fight this, the easier it'll be to deal with.
I mean, clearly, face-to-face is the best answer if you can do it. But I'm just thinking you are in Canada, and if there's only 2 events and there's, not a lot of money involved, then you've got your airfare, you've got accommodation, you've got to get down there and all of those things. It may not work out. If there's only 20 people, it depends how much they're paying, and then that's the other thing is what kind of price would it end up being, and then there's the room and everything else. Right? These things aren't easy for individuals to organise unless they are used to organising events. So really, you need to be talking to the organisers of groups and things, and what in an ideal world to make life easy for everybody is the organisers of all these freedom hubs who have people in. They need to get together in one WhatsApp group or something and say, I want to get Stan McDonald over in July. And then the rest of the organisers from all the groups go, great, okay, we'll make sure that Stan is busy from day 1 in July to the end of July, and we'll work out the best route for him to go. And they put on the event, and they all say, we'll put you up at a hotel, and then all you've got to do is travel from each one, turn up, do your thing, have a night, be fed, have a night in the hotel, go to the next one. This is not beyond. Yeah. It's just a question of all these little groups, and there are all over the country these groups that do these things. I mean, I was the one, as I said, at Buxton Freedom Hub. Now, if those are in pockets and wherever, whoever is the organizer of, say, the Buxton one, and the organizer of the one who's in, I don't know, Shrewsbury, and the one that's in the one in Birmingham and one's in London, just the people who do the organise, they've only got to get together in a group and organise, because then these sort of things can happen with a lot more organisation and less sporadic and less all over the place. And so that people like yourself who are offering your services can actually get over here and do it.
Exactly. That's the ideal world. If we could do that, great.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all trying to push back against the dark forces. The least that we, in theory, ought to be able to do is organise some speakers to go around the country through the little hubs. And each individual at the organisers of each one have only got to organise their own and just sit on a committee in a WhatsApp group and say, I'd like to have Stan on the Tuesday. And then who's within 50 miles of that? Oh, will you have it next week? Or you have it the day after or the day after that, whatever. It really can't be that difficult to organise. It's a question of whether these hubs will actually talk to one another, and that does seem to be a difficult thing.
Yes, and the other thing is you'd have to get the message out to the hubs that you want to do this.
Well,
right? Because right now
they're
they
not
don't
all.
know.
Yeah, clearly they're not all watching my material, and even if they
It
are,
should
they're
be.
not all watching every episode, and they may have missed this one. So, or they may have watched the first bit and then turned off. That's the that's the problem. How do you do it? And I'm busy enough as it is. So, but I could certainly facilitate a Zoom version where we get people in on a specific day and they just log in and away we go. And see how it goes. And we can limit the number, so there's not too many questions. You could say, okay, 100 people max. You've got to, it'll be people. It could be first come, first serve, or it could be you need to, I hate the word register, but you could show an expression of interest before a certain date, and then those people will be allowed in, whatever. And then if it's a success, you could do it again, that sort of thing.
Right. Well, I hate to put you on the spot, but can we set a date right now? Since
No.
we're on the top one.
I haven't got my diary in front of me, but I can do that after. We can talk about it afterwards, after the recording.
Okay.
But we can set something up. What I would say is let's see the interest. If people have come on the back of this and seen this video, let's see if there is an interest in the comments. Please don't send me an email, but in the comments, if people are interested and want to do that, just say so in the comments, and then we can get something set up.
Sounds good.
Anyway, so I'll leave it there because time is ticking on for this video, but I hope that makes a lot of sense to people. And we could do this sort of thing on a number of issues because Stan does have a whole backlog of things. Just so that people know, I'll put it in the description anyway, but your YouTube channel that you've got stuff on is, what's that come under?
It's just under my name, Stan McDonald. That's it. It's one word. That's it.
One lovely word, glistening with roses. So I'll put the link in the description. Thank you so much, Stan, for that. We will try and organise something, but do let us know in the comments. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Stan, thank you for coming over all the way from good old Canada, and I will see you, lovely people, soon enough. Until next time, from both Stan and I, bye-bye.